From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
A seafood lover's dream.
A perfect seafood dish is about balance.
We take you to this year's Great American Seafood Cook-Off to see some of the top dishes. Cleaning up from Debbie.
This is my shop.
See what's left behind after the storm's relentless rains. As USDA forecasts big things for this year's corn and soybean crops.
Multiple fronts of bearishness.
What that could mean for prices going forward right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Put Pioneer brand corn's exclusive genetics on your team. Win with higher yields and industry-leading traits. Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. USDA releasing its first survey-based prediction of the season. And it's now calling for a record corn crop. The agency upping the corn yield by 2.1 bushels per acre, now calling for a yield of 183.1. Production now forecast at 15.1 billion bushels, up 47 million from last month. Now for soybeans, another big number here. 53.2 bushels per acre, up 1.2 bushels from last month. Production is now forecast to be 4.6 billion bushels, up 154 million on those higher yields. Checking ending stocks, old crop corn at 1.8 billion bushels, down slightly from last month, and new crop at more than 2 billion. Soybeans, 345 million for old, unchanged from last month. New crop in at 560 million. That's up 125 million from a month ago. While for wheat, 702 million of old crop, unchanged from last month. New crop comes in at 828 million. AgDay's Michelle Rook has been poring over these numbers. And Michelle, the market is having to digest a forecast that calls for a big soybean yield along with higher ending stocks.
Right, the bearish reaction to the report came in soybeans, which saw record yields, plus a surprising increase in acreage. So the final balance sheets have to digest a big increase in production and carryout from last month and last year. Now, in contrast, corn yields were also a record, but USDA offset that with lower acreage and slightly higher usage. So the net result was actually a slight drawdown in corn ending stocks, which was price positive. U.S. soybean yields were increased 1.2 bushels per acre to a record 53.2, which was more than expected. While yields were down substantially from last year in the southeastern U.S., nearly every Corn Belt state saw increases, with Illinois up 5% to a record 66 bushels per acre, and Iowa was up 5% as well at 61. USDA also surprisingly raised harvested acres.
Soybeans really have been the leader to the downside recently, and based on this report, they're likely to continue to do so. Multiple fronts of bearishness. Number one, trade was looking for an increase in yield, and it got it, and a little bit more than expected. So we're looking at a record national average of 53.2 bushels per acre. And alongside that, the harvested acres for soybeans went up about 1 million.
The trade was expecting lower soybean acres, so that raised production by 154 million bushels, resulting in ending stocks being up 125 million from last month and 215 million bushels over last year, which is bearish for price.
This has the stocks ballooning on new crop estimates from 435 million bushels to 560 million bushels. And so that is going to be something that's going to be tough to claw back from.
Corn yield was also a record at 183.1, with record yields in Illinois at 225 bushels per acre and Iowa at 209. However, here yield was offset by 700,000 fewer harvested acres, so production was only up 47 million from last month. And with the slight uptick in usage for both old and new crop, that left a smaller ending stocks number by 24 million bushels.
But that is a new record, and that's about almost 6 bushels per acre above our current record for corn. When they go from that July yield number to a higher number, that then kind of sets the stage for that conversation of big crops get bigger. And then the market will likely believe that incrementally the yield will go up.
So he says that could mean a growing balance sheet in September.
That 183.1 will likely go up, and a couple tenths of a bushel here in the next report, and we should see the carryout go back up a little bit next month.
The report was also slightly friendly for wheat. While yield was raised by nearly a half bushel, harvested acres were lowered by nearly 1 million, resulting in lower production and ending stocks, which fell by 28 million bushels. Split says, however, he doesn't think this will bottom that market. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Along with a new look at the possible size of this year's crop, we also got a better look at how that crop is progressing. USDA reporting 67% of the corn crop is rated good to excellent. That's the same as last week. For soybeans, 68% of that crop is said to be good to excellent, also on par with last week. Cotton conditions, now 46% is rated in the good to excellent category. That's up 1% from a week ago. And next week at this time, we'll be getting a better look at the crops for ourselves. The annual Pro Farmer Crop Tour kicks off next Monday, August 19th. We'll be heading into the fields of Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Ohio, and South Dakota. Each night, crews in the East and West will meet to talk about the samples, and tour leads Brian Grady of Pro Farmer and Chip Flory of AgriTalk will bring you the yield forecast for each state. And we will bring you those numbers each night as well as part of Crop Tour Live on Farm Journal's social media channels and on agweb.com. What's left of Hurricane Debbie brought continued heavy rain and flooding to parts of the Northeast last week before finally moving into Canada. In New York State, near the Pennsylvania border, one farmer reported heavy damage to his dairy farm, which had been in the area for more than 5 decades. Vermont also hit by rain after already seeing flash flooding twice last month. Early Friday morning, one farmer in Bono, South Carolina, walked through knee-deep water with water rushing into his workshop and properties nearby. The storm spent nearly a week unleashing tornadoes and flooding after making landfall twice on the East Coast. And the severe weather threat isn't over yet for the Carolinas. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has the very latest for us.
As we go through the next couple of days, so the pattern that we had last week is going to start to shift. Remember, last week we were dealing with a tropical system. Now we're kind of flipping things over where the moisture is going to be there in through parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, but the heat is going to return as well. That's that combination of the possibility for a few stronger thunderstorms. So here's a look at it. This is Tuesday at 7 a.m. The white lines you see here, that's actually looking at what's going on with the jet stream. So a ridge trying to develop back out here towards the west. It's not going to be as amplified. It's not going to reach as far north as the one did a couple of weeks ago where we had those ridge riders. But there is going to be a ridge out there, and right along that ridge and in between the ridge and the trough, that's where we may see some of these thunderstorms kick up. So this is Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the morning. The showers, thunderstorms in and around where that ridge is located, but the strength of the ridge, the center of it, is going to work from the west over here towards the east, keeping any kind of instability or lift in the atmosphere back up here to the north. Again, there's Thursday at 5 a.m. And our own Clinton Griffiths sharing a photo with us today. This is taken in St. Joe County, Indiana. He says farmers near him were bringing in another cutting of hay for the summer. They report tonnage has been excellent thanks to the steady rains and lots of sunshine. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
On one hand, markets reacted strongly to USDA's latest report. On the other hand, the response was somewhat muted. We'll talk about where markets go now next. And later, I know where I'll be headed in Louisiana to try one of these fantastic seafood dishes. We'll stop by the Great American Seafood Cook-Off today in the country.
Earn revenue through the Bear Carbon Program. Simple, flexible, certain. Learn more at bearforeground.com/carbon.
Soybeans sunk double digits following the release of the latest supply and demand report, with yield changes calling for a pretty big crop. Michelle Rook is back with further analysis in Markets Now.
Corn ending higher, soybeans lower after the WSDA report on Monday. Ted Seifert with Zaner Ag Hedge is with us with analysis. And let's talk about soybeans. It was a bearish report overall. How much lower do you think we need to go, Ted, to absorb a 560 million bushel ending stocks number?
This kind of screams 880 soybeans to me, unless something happens weather-wise in the next 3 weeks, and then we have to walk that yield number back down. a 560 or maybe even bigger carryover number for soybeans just doesn't really support anything with a 10 in front of it, maybe not even anything with a 9 in front of it. So that's a big question mark. And it does suggest that we've got a lot more work to do to the downside in soybeans. However, the question again is timing because of the way corn closed. I'm not so sure we're going to see these markets moving in complete opposite directions for extended periods of time. So what's going to win here in the short to midterm, Michelle? That's the biggest question.
Short term, though, corn was up, and it wasn't that the report was necessarily bullish. It was just maybe a little less bearish. Ending stocks down about 25 million bushels, sum total. Does this just stop the bleeding temporarily, though, Ted?
Well, I think it's a pretty good sign for corn where you have a yield that comes in higher than the trade guesses, and probably pretty close to what the trade's been factoring in, and yet your carryover doesn't really increase dramatically. We were able to find the demand, or the USDA was able to find the demand to really offset that. And again, a lower acreage number as well. So that's actually a pretty big sigh of relief for corn. And so you saw that reflected on the board in the form of a pretty substantial key reversal. I mean, we made new contract lows for that December corn, and then ended up closing not only above Friday's highs, but also above Thursday's highs. So your technical traders are going to point to, hey, look at that. That was a really nice reversal higher. That is maybe indicating that we're getting close to putting in a bottom or could be the low. The problem with that though, that I have, Michelle, is the timing of year. Big crops do get bigger, so maybe that yield number might actually creep higher. Also, we know that there's a lot of on-farm corn left to move before we actually get into harvest.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Ted. Ted Seifert, Zaner Ag Hedge. We'll have more Ag Day coming up. Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
For professional marketing advice specifically tailored to your needs, call Zaner Ag Hedge at 312-277-0113.
Wind gust forecast as you go through your Tuesday and Wednesday. You'll see where that ridge is located, the center of that ridge back down here to the south. Things are going to stay quiet, but the farther you get from the center, the better chance of some of these stronger winds kicking up. So more into the 30, if not 40 mile per hour range. Parts of Oklahoma and back up into the Dakotas as well. As we go into your Wednesday night and Thursday, start to see that kind of shift a little bit more to the east and also take up parts of the Midwest. And this is Thursday at 3 a.m. A couple of pockets of some stronger winds moving through Oklahoma, Texas, and then associated with some isolated thunderstorms that are going to be working across the Midwest. There you have some stronger wind gusts into Minnesota, Wisconsin, even Iowa and northern Illinois. So again, the wind threat is there. Not looking at widespread severe weather, but combination of that wind with some thunderstorms, maybe looking at some pockets of severe weather kicking up as you get towards the second half of the work week. Weekend forecast looks a little wet as well. The overall precipitation outlook between the 17th and the 21st, where that ridge is located, things stay dry. We may get some showers, some thunderstorms towards the tail end of this week, and then drying out the 17th to the 21st back up into the upper Midwest. Still wet with the possibility of some stronger thunderstorms during this time period, 17th through the 21st, both on the East Coast, the Northeast, and then getting some rain back in here and possibly into the Dakotas and the Northwest, where it is baking. It has been dry, so now we're starting to see that overall pattern shift for possibly wetter than normal conditions. What this looks like from the jet stream standpoint, again, this is the jet stream on Tuesday. There's the ridge down here to the south. Get some thunderstorms popping back up here towards the north and then trying to work in and across the Midwest on Wednesday night and into Thursday. So not really all that amplified. We've been talking about widespread severe weather if that ridge was a lot stronger. We're starting to see hints of the heat trying to return this time next week. So next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there's your amplified ridge. We'll have to be on the lookout for some showers and thunderstorms working down the ridge in between that trough and the ridge. As this shifts to the east, which we expect it to do by Wednesday and Thursday, the heat is going to be back in the forecast. Again, there's a jet stream coming up on Monday. We'll start off in Lenoir, North Carolina. Not Lenoir County, North Carolina, rather Lenoir, North Carolina. Showers high around 79 degrees. Bruno Township, that could be Bruno Mars. That could also be Don't Talk About Bruno. That's in Kansas. Morning thunderstorms high around 91. And finally, Rugby, North Dakota. Mostly sunny, high of 81.
Well, the dairy market is adjusting to a new normal. We'll have the latest production trends coming up next. And later, we're off to Louisiana to see these kids try their hand at creating a southern treat, the Great American Seafood Cook-Off in the country. There is concern that as milk supplies continue to tighten, more milk dryers could run light. Serena Sharp, an analyst with the Daily Dairy Report, providing an update for dairyherd.com. She says from January through June, combined output of non-fat dry milk and skim milk powder declined by more than 15% compared to last year. And if dairy producers continue to struggle with boosting milk production and processing capacity expands as expected, U.S. milk powder production could continue to decline, while there would be an increased production output in butter and cheese. And even though milk production has lagged, higher butter prices have dairy producers boosting butter fat levels, and those levels have more than offset a milk production deficit. Now, for the first 6 months of this year, milk production has dropped by 0.9%, a four-year low compared to the same period last year. Speaking of milk powder, the National Milk Producers Federation and the U.S. Dairy Export Council are asking the government to prepare a plan if Colombia moves forward with imposing tariffs on U.S. milk powder exports. The country claiming U.S. milk powder is a like product to one manufactured in the country. The group's sending a letter last week to U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai and Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack, asking the leaders to leverage all available tools if Colombia moves forward with tariffs, saying the threat has no merit. Currently, U.S. producers export about $70 million worth of milk powder to Colombia each year. One thing that's happening right now in the industry, there appears to be a slowdown in dairy cow culling. USDA's Ag Marketing Service estimating the number of dairy cows marketed for beef has now trailed year-ago levels for 45 consecutive weeks and was down about 332,000 from the same period a year earlier. Phil Plord of Ever.Ag Insights says it's due to a smaller milking herd, the limited availability of replacement heifers, and the slight improvement in milk income margins. However, Robin Schmall with agmarket.net believes the culling will continue because beef on dairy adds significantly to a dairy farm's bottom line. And one thing still in demand is a good seafood dinner. And these students are ready to serve. We'll stop by the Great American Seafood Cook-Off next in the country. .4-H members from several states gathered in New Orleans to participate in the Great American Seafood Cook-Off. And according to the judges of the contest, everyone brought their A game to the competition. LSU Ag Center reporter Craig Gautreaux has this report from the Big Easy.
Fresh seafood was the featured ingredient for 6 4-H teams from across the South at this year's Great American Seafood Cook-Off in New Orleans. And while Gulf seafood was the focal point of their recipes, each of the teams put their own hometown twists on their signature dishes.
If there's something specific to their parish, county, state that they want to incorporate in their dishes, then that's just phenomenal, because we do want them to bring a piece of home with them.
Cooking in front of a crowd, being judged by professional chefs, and facing a 1-hour time limit put pressure on these young chefs. But some developed strategies to deal with it.
We made sure our dish could be finished in 30 minutes no matter what. If start to finish, it takes 30 minutes to cook our dish. With that hour, you have leeway, so you don't have to rush.
Cooking with seafood requires skill, and understanding what each ingredient brings to the dish is essential to success.
A perfect seafood dish is about balance. And getting that balance can be a little bit difficult, and you have to truly understand every single ingredient in the dish.
Another factor shaping the competitors' dishes was that their entries were not only judged on taste, but on how healthy they were.
We wanted something that was easy to make, rich in protein and low in calories. We also wanted something that was local, so like the sweet potatoes are grown in our parish. and the shrimp are also local.
For the second consecutive year, the Starr County, Texas team took home the top prize with Louisiana's Ascension Parish team placing second. From the Great American Seafood Cook-Off, this is Craig Gocho reporting from New Orleans for the LSU Ag Center.
All right, thanks, Craig. That all looks so good. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.